This 6-foot-long animal produces what almost no other animal can conjure.
Man, I never should have given up my rap career. My bars were fire. Oh, damn, I'm still gonna make a video this month. My devout and loyal fans are waiting. I just gotta find something to do it on. Yeah, fuck it, that'll do. Hello, famous YouTuber Fish here, with kind of a weird one. My channel is pretty much dedicated to media analysis, but I am of the opinion that you don't need to think too deeply about shit to like really enjoy something. The subject of this video is kind of unique in this regard, because if you don't want to see the subtext or you don't have the required like background knowledge to really get it, is an entirely worthless piece of media. For one, it is a visual novel, which is a very hard sell. I think this is probably the only one I've ever played my entire life, because I only play real games for real manly men. Oh, that's the dude on the screen! And despite being a visual novel, the art and writing feel very phoned in from the creator's last project. Which, I mean, is kind of the point of a visual novel, you would imagine. Without good art or good writing, it's like, you know, like, what's the point? But I'll get into that later. But why would I even make a video on something that just absolutely sucks? You know, I may not have enjoyed Postal, but it wasn't really as devoid of positives as Psycholonials is. So why would I then? That would be because Psycholonials, first off, would make a shorter video, and that's what I want to make. And second, this game was made by the creator of Homestuck, which is the previous work I referenced earlier. Now, if hearing Homestuck didn't immediately make you leap out of the nearest window onto the largest pit of spikes you can find, good. That means you haven't read Homestuck. And also, that means you don't know who Andrew Hussey is, which is also good, because that means you didn't read Homestuck. Because I find him interesting in the same sort of way that people find Christian interesting. And without knowledge of those two things, Psycholonials is just unable to be understood. And Homestuck, its creation, the impact on its career, and I guess ultimately why it was abandoned is pretty much what Psycholonials is about. It's got other like general message you could get if you just like read it, but again, it sucks, don't do that. It's got a lot of very thin allegories towards stuff that might as well be an autobiography at times. I should also mention that Psycholonials is the only thing that Hussey has done since Homestuck ended in 2016, and Psycholonials came out in 2021. And I will talk about Homestuck in a second, but that's a good reference point on the sort of effect it had on him, because Homestuck was a big fucking deal. Psycholonials and Homestuck are completely inseparable, and because of that I will unfortunately have to talk a little bit about Homestuck. I apologize in advance for how vague I'm going to come across about this. I only have to bring up Homestuck because of how important it is to Psycholonials, but it's something that can only be described poorly. It's kind of a webcomic, but it's mostly like a mixed media amalgamation of webcomic animations and a little bit of playable flash game type beats. Point is, it's hard to describe. What's also hard to describe is anything even relating to the plot, because Homestuck is long. It's really fucking long. So long, in fact, it pretty much consumed the creator's life while it was being made. It consists of somewhere between 750,000 to 1.2 million words, and I think just shy of 15,000 panels. Not including the animations or the flash sequences, that already puts it as one of the longest pieces of written fiction ever made. Longer than even some well-known fan favorites, like the Bible. That wouldn't be in the fiction section, though. Oh, they just send you straight to hell if you mention Homestuck in the Bible in the same sentence. No trial. I can't blame them. Honestly, I deserve this. Nah, I'm just kidding. I didn't actually go to hell. Anyway, and as someone who was reading it as it came out, Homestuck, not the Bible, you fucking mong. It felt a lot longer than it was, because it was frequently put on hiatus. I should mention it was being made over the course of 7 years. Most of the hiatuses were before big animations or something of the like, but after a certain point it was clear that Homestuck was only continuing for, I guess the paycheck? Even though I have no idea how much money Homestuck made, it's free to read. At a certain point, which was very identifiably S-Cascade, real ones know, the hiatuses became more of a I don't want to do this anymore sort of deal, which was fair. The amount of content from Homestuck in such a relatively short time span is still insane, but Homestuck was pretty infamous for having an absolutely rabid fucking fan base, and it wouldn't end up being the sort of thing you could just silently drop without assuming a completely new identity, but clearly the passion for it was gone for a long time by the time that it ended. Although it was softly mercy-killed a little before that, because of the release of Undertale, because most of the people that liked Homestuck kind of migrated to liking that instead, and that was because Toby Fox very prominently worked on Homestuck's soundtrack, and yes, Homestuck did have a soundtrack, The music I put during that little transition part and the song that's playing right now where we're both part of it was kind of wild. But that's neither here nor there. I still thought it was important to mention. But now that I'm done kind of talking about how Homestuck went, somewhat factually, I'd like to talk about my kind of opinion on it. And this will still be important for Psycholonials, don't worry, I haven't fucking forgotten what this video is about. But Homestuck might be one of the greatest achievements of a single person, maybe ever. And I don't mean that in a way where it's some life-changing piece of divine literature or anything. If you were to read it now, it'd be horribly dated, and to be honest, it probably kind of sucked at the time too. But what I do mean is the kind of importance that Homestuck commanded. The gravitas, everything within it felt like it had, all being balled up to one of the longest things ever written in human history, and I cannot stress enough how ridiculous that is the whole human history we're talking about. Homestuck is one of the longest things ever written. Like, there have been billions of people who have came and went, and some may have even aspired to do something like what Homestuck did, but couldn't. But one guy managed to pretty much do it on accident, and probably more than anything else that's this long, tons of people actually stuck through and read Homestuck start to finish. I can't get a good estimate of really how much people that was, but the final animation was released on YouTube, and it has about 3 million views, and I guess that would be the best estimate I could have. But I can't stress enough how much of an achievement that is. That's only kind of half of what I mean. The other half is, and I understand that this might sound like it's hyperbole, but I do truly mean this 100%. Homestuck was the largest failure in the human history of storytelling. From when cavemen just figured out how to grunt in a way that other people could understand, all the way until today, no one has ever thrown away something like this before. And I don't even think someone will ever replicate how hard Homestuck started to fucking suck, because it might not even be possible. We're all lucky to live in a time where we're alive to see someone fuck something up this badly. The lack of care that was put into Act 6 turned Homestuck from something that had weird teenagers smearing grey face paint all over shit in every random convention you could think of, to a piece of history the instant that it ended. And I don't imagine most of the people watching this video will have read Homestuck, and I wouldn't be surprised either if most of them hadn't even heard of it. It'd be hard to grasp what I just said if you weren't there, but if you were, you know. But for the purpose of analyzing Psycholonials, I'm going to need you to just take my opinion as the unadulterated truth, because I'll be very sad and I'll be compelled to place bombs in a government building if you don't, and that'll be your fault, dick. Damn, I managed to go this long without actually talking about Psycholonials at all. My bad. But to be fair, Homestuck is as important to the game as the game is itself. And obviously I have to be kind of brief and loosey-goosey with Homestuck because it's long as fuck. But anyway, Psycholonials, as previously mentioned, is a completely non-interactive visual novel. As in, there aren't like choices or anything like that. One could ask the question, why wasn't it in the same format as Homestuck was? Because it clearly could be. Now, you'd be right in thinking that's weird, and it would be. The most prudent explanation I could come up with was that he just wanted money for it. I guess, lol, I don't know. But ignoring the fact that I paid $15 for a slideshow, Psycholonials generally acts as a sort of manifesto for Hussy's thoughts about Homestuck and its fanbase, and it's actually remarkably complex. Homestuck isn't really a deep thinker sort of situation. Psycholonials really felt like it was aspiring to something, but I was shocked about how bittersweet is portrayed compared to how Homestuck was dropped like his least favorite son onto the tile floor. Honestly, I thought he just hated Homestuck and wanted to wash his hands of it, but I guess there was a little more to that. Speaking of there being more to it than that, I should probably explain the general plot so I can actually get into the whole analysis business. So, the story revolves around our protagonist, C, and she is... Alright, if I'm going to talk about that, I have to get the fucking bad parts out of the way first. I cannot stress enough how much of a fucking slog this game was. I don't usually really like to gawk at how bad something is. I really don't feel like it's necessary, and it's reductive a lot of the time. But I really feel like it's necessary to go over here. Holy shit. Psycholonials may have the single worst concept for a plot I've personally ever seen in anything. The protagonist C is a depressed e-girl living through the pandemic who is desperately trying to get over being cancelled and regain a social media presence by starting a clown socialist gender revolution thing. And I know that just sounded like buzzwords, but that is actually what that actually happens. And is a major part of the plot. And it is as fucking stupid as it sounds, but speaking of the main protagonist, I don't think I've ever seen someone write a genuinely less likable character in my entire life, and there was a bunch of characters from Homestuck that were really punching up for top spot. I don't know if it was intentional or not, but she doesn't go through any real character growth. At the start of the game, she's a vain, self-important, borderline narcissist. And at the end, she's also a vain, self-important, borderline narcissist, but she acknowledges that she did a bad thing. But that's like really, really small for like what she did. Because throughout the events of the story, she pretty much causes millions of people to die, and also kills a couple people personally for little to no good reason, and she doesn't really feel bad about it either. Her character is just confusing about what you're actually supposed to feel toward her, because mostly it just feels like she's a vehicle for the kind of story and like themes that Hussey wanted to put forward, but had very little thought put into how she was actually supposed to be perceived herself. Mostly she's a vehicle for the extremely paper-thin Homestuck allegories. And did I mention that she likes Homestuck? Yeah, there's just a picture of Carcat from Homestuck on her wall, and the least subtle line in human history gets dropped when she looks at it. And also, she just has a PNG of a fucking Homestuck character taped on their wall in 2020. Like, hello? Not like art or anything, just a PNG of a character is just like, okay, alright, I guess. The other main character in the story is Z's best and only friend, Abby, and damn, there has never been a character more committed to grooming than this woman. In my notes I had while I was playing this game, I wrote that the grooming was egregious about fucking 4 separate times. And not in like a pedophile way, which no doubt you're used to on YouTube by now, but more in the sense that the game takes place during the lowest point in Z's life, and she relentlessly flirts with her the entire time, and pretty much yes-mans everything that she says, until they get together at the end of the game, and you're not supposed to see a problem with that. Like, it isn't presented as a bad thing, even slightly. And there's a little speech at the end of the game talking about how love is like the method to fully enjoy your life and live with fulfillment. But it's completely sullied by the actual A-grade turbo grooming that happens. It's actually fucking wild. Anyway, I'd also like to note the game is really slow to get into it. If I wasn't committed to making a video, I wouldn't have gotten past the first 3 chapters. And on top of that, the art is sort of lazy compared to Homestuck. There's some genuinely beautiful panels. I don't really know why all the panels I chose had to be a Beck Noir, but whatever. The last thing I really want to shit on the game for is its politics. They're brought up to be very important and essential to the plot, but then just aren't. The constant mention of like colonialism being bad is a driving force for the protagonist, but is unclear why they care so much. Like, obviously it's a bad thing, but I feel like starting a revolution because it happened hundreds of years ago is a bit of a stretch. And also the constant shitting on capitalism. Like, I'm down for a bit of socialism personally, but they never really talk about why what the characters are setting up is better. The story treats socialism as like a cure-all for societal problems, which is an incredibly American... an incredibly foolish thing to say, even though a very central thing in the game is that America fucking sucks. It's kind of ironic, even. Also, socialism involves a lot of like organizing and unions and shit, which is pretty much the opposite of what they're trying to do in the plot. They just kind of fucking get clowns to beat up rich people, and like they aren't setting up any form of like real government or anything. It really just comes off like Hussey didn't go as far to even Google what the word socialism means. But also the clown socialist gender thing that the main character sets in motion starts having an effect on the entire world. And the first and only country that is mentioned to fully fall to fucking, keep in mind, socialism is Russia. The game mentions that it's in their blood or something to do socialist revolutions. There's never been a more American... foolish line written and published unironically. Like, really? Russia? Maybe the least likely country in the entire world to fucking consider a socialist government. And like, all the gender shit going on too. The Russian people are notoriously very accepting of that sort of thing, obviously. Like, what? My point with that is that they really should not have fucking brought up politics at all if they weren't going to understand even slightly what they were talking about. But also, the bad parts are kind of what got me through to the end, so I'm kind of thankful there's a bunch of completely stupid shit. That was kind of a lot of shit talking, and that didn't even really get all the problems I have with the game off my chest, but I feel like those were the most important parts. I'd also like to mention that Hussey at the moment is 44, just in case you thought it was written by some dumbass college student. It wasn't. He also might be a multi-millionaire because of Homestuck, but I don't have any information about that. I'm just assuming because of all the fucking things surrounding Homestuck. Just in case, again, you thought it was by some poor college student. Anyway, that's me done shitting on it for the time being. I'm gonna ignore everything I just said and pretend like it's not weird from this point onward, and actually get into the kind of the analysis part. Alright, now that I'm done with that, I can kind of get back into it. Anyway, something that Psycholonials does a lot is pretty much directly talking about Hussey's experience with managing and creating Homestuck. There are a lot of times where this happens, but probably the most egregious one is the first time. I showed it a second ago, but it's very emblematic of problems that Psycholonials exists to talk about. Also, more closely tie it to Homestuck, I suppose. The narration states, quote, "There was a long story you read when you were young, you almost never talk about it now, but this guy is here to remind you, whether you like it or not, it's a part of you now." End quote. Which is so direct, I'm not really sure I need to say what it means to say, but I will anyway for the crayon munchers in the back. For Hussey, Homestuck is something that will hang around him forever, and he knows this. It comes up a couple of times, kind of visualized as a sword of Damocles, something unavoidable in all of his future endeavors. In all his writing or art, it will always be quickly recognized as the Homestuck style rather than his own, and he'll never catch a break from it, and that line is basically an understanding and acceptance of that. And the line comes shortly after the game starts too, so it almost acts as some sort of, I guess, explanation. Like, yeah, I get that I'm the guy who made Homestuck, and you're expecting something like it, but don't, because it isn't coming, and I want this to be different. And it's kind of half and half on that front. The writing, when it's not being so stupid it's hard to read, comes off initially as Homestuck without any of the real soul to it, but it kind of picks up near the middle and the end, and there's a part where the main character sits down and, I guess, confronts their thoughts about their parents after finding out that their mom has been dead for weeks and she didn't even realize. That's legitimately great, and definitely the highlight of the game writing-wise. It even feels like Hussey's still kind of capable of writing something truly great like Homestuck again. But I do understand I'm blatantly ignoring the message from that quote and saying that, but it is true. The game also repeatedly hammers in that you can't choose things for other people, and you really shouldn't let people choose things for you. And I didn't write that whole part about Homestuck for fun. That is basically what Hussey thought about Homestuck. He felt pressured into continuing it because he felt like he had something massive on his hands, represented by the violent clan revolution that Z starts and then promptly is unable to control and feels stuck commanding. And also the subsequent part where she washes her hands of it being shown as a very, I guess, cleansing experience for her. I can assume in some ways meant to mirror Hussey's thoughts about Homestuck's demise. And a lot of the, I guess, parallels between the Jubilets, which is what the game calls Z's socialist clan group thing, being completely rabid, unwaveringly loyal soldiers ready to do anything for her, is meant to kind of represent Hussey's kind of feelings on the fan base. That being that they were a bunch of insane weirdos that were pretty much in love with the thing that he created, but like in the game, they kiss his ass too much for any genuine socialization to occur. Being unable to basically go anywhere online without being drowned by people that he can't ever talk to in good faith, basically creating a wall of people stopping him from ever meeting anyone. Was that too high concept? Maybe, but I don't know. That's what I got out of it. Some of the obvious comments toward the Homestuck fanbase are, like, overtly venomous, though. But it feels kind of confusing to track what was meant toward them, and I say them like I didn't read Homestuck as well, but the post-ending spiel thing talks about liking Homestuck directly, and finding something else with meaning in your life, which comes off as very weird and slightly egotistical. This video I've probably given Homestuck the highest praise it should probably ever receive, but to go as far as to even imply that anyone's still holding out for something Homestuck related 5 years after it ended is kind of self-absorbed, and it cannot be understated how fast everyone stopped caring about it. And I don't know, maybe the concept for Psycholonials was being written all the way back when, and that's just a relic of that, but comes off as a lack of self-reflection, which I feel is a bit strange for something so obviously introspective. Also, it's a weird line anyway, considering the amount of Homestuck references. Like, nobody was asking for them, but there they are. Most aren't even important to the story or themes. Like, the first one was, but like, they just dropped stuff for no reason. Like, the main character kind of based their whole clan revolution vibe off of Gamzee from Homestuck, even though that kind of goes against the main character's extremely clear hatred for imperialism and shit from Homestuck. I'm not gonna explain it, but it does. But I don't know if I was supposed to find that strange or anything, but it's there. At the same time, the end of the game makes an allegory for Z's revolution not being as, I guess, life-consuming as she thought it was. kind of being representative of Homestuck's extremely fast demise, so he clearly knows. Maybe it was intended as sort of message to self, not really a message to the reader. The post-credits message thing is very flippy-floppy with the rest of the game's messages. I guess I should mention you can only find it specifically if you try and load a save after the credits. So let's try to drill in the whole move on, there's nothing more to see here type shit from the get-go. But I think it's interesting to see Hussey's perspective on that anyway, because as the game implies, if you didn't already read Homestuck, it really is like it never happened at all. You never hear about it nowadays, and maybe some random person will have a Homestuck profile picture and you get reminded of it or something like that, but I never see anyone actually talking about it. And Hussey's reflections on Homestuck are interesting to me for that reason, because make no mistake, even though Hussey didn't bring his A game to Psycholonials, it was Hussey that made Homestuck, not the other way around, because it wouldn't have died so fast otherwise. The game also pushes forward some other ideas, like you shouldn't care as much about what other people think of you, and don't get so obsessed with being popular online. It isn't healthy to view people as numbers and shit, but there wasn't really much substance to those, so I don't feel like talking about them in depth. I guess, like, as a teensy-weensy little conclusion, Psycholonials is basically about Hussey kind of rejecting Homestuck as, like, a sort of label on him, and also all the associations that are brought with that for, honestly, not even that bad of reasons. I would have done it too. But yeah, I guess I'll go fuck myself with that whole shorter video thing. I had to start yapping about Homestuck, which, if you watch my videos, you can probably tell I'm way more passionate about Homestuck than I am for most things. It was, I'd say it was kind of a big part of my, I guess, teenage years, was reading Homestuck. But anyway, Psycholonials sucks, but it does talk about something near and dear to me. And honestly, I'd really like it if Hussey continued to make games or whatever. He's clearly still got something in him to make something really good. I want to mention something else. Psycholonials pretty much got shadow dropped. I didn't play it for the first time until like 6 months after it came out, and because of that, it didn't really sell very good. I wouldn't really usually care about something like that, like I don't give a fuck, but it's kind of interesting, because as far as I can tell, a fan project called the Genesis Project, oh, awesome writing, thanks whoever wrote this dumbass script, which attempts to bring the game Spurb from Homestuck to life as an actual playable video game, seems to be doing better in early access by a significant margin than Psycholonials did, which is kind of poetic, and maybe even what the Huster wanted. Or maybe not, I don't know. Researching Hussey was actually kind of a big issue for me, because he pretty much doesn't have an internet presence at all. The best I could do was a Twitter account with all of its posts deleted, and an Instagram account of his Clown Sona from Psycholonials. The last time he uploaded was 2021 though, and despite how kind of embarrassing this looks, I don't know, I wish I could have gotten more information. Also, 413 passed while writing this. Happy Homestuck Day if anyone still gives a shit about that. I might make a video on Homestuck itself one day. This video kind of got me in the mood to do that. Maybe a far off day, but Homestuck is very interesting itself, as you could probably imagine with something that's that long. It's gotta have some shit to talk about. Maybe I gotta back up my claim on how fucking hard it fell. Someone's probably done that though. And I'd also have to read Homestuck, which is a couple month long commitment at least, but we'll see. You should subscribe to my channel, or I'll do something bad, I'll fucking throw your dog out of a window. But anyway, I have to go now, because I have to flay my wife alive for making fun of me.
I'm not making videos anymore. That's Adam.
Yay!